If you really want to gain velocity in getting people to back you in whatever you want to do, you have to engage them in the process. What we always want to strive for is to exceed others' expectations and not to disappoint people. But what we're also striving for is how to maintain our velocity and how to make sure we're working on the right tasks that move us forward. So the secret to gaining velocity and influence is to engage your audience. Many of us today are feeling out of sorts. We are in a period of flux and not sure of our future. Today is only a point in time in our lives. How we handle this difficult period will impact our overall performance in life. Are you letting this tough moment negatively impact you, or are you using it to create breakthrough thinking on what you want and need to do to win the marathon of life? Now, you're taking some quantified risks which will help you gain velocity. Welcome to this week's Velocity Mindset Success Stories. My name is Ron Karr, and I'm the author of the Velocity Mindset. I've been waiting to do this show for a long time because we have a really special guest with us. He is the CEO of the Trust Edge Leadership Institute. He's a trust expert in residence at High Point University and a Wall Street Journal bestselling author of The Trust Edge. He has advised leaders and delivered life-changing presentations on 6 continents with audiences ranging everywhere from FedEx, Toyota, MIT, and global governments to, check this out, the New York Yankees and the Department of Homeland Security. Please help me welcome to the show, David Horsager. Hello, David. How are you today?
Hey, Ron. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
So, you and I have known each other for a long time, and we respect each other. In fact, one of your earlier books, I was so engaged by it, I bought hundreds of copies and gave it out to my clients.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The bill will be in the mail.
Yeah.
The question is this. What led you to becoming an expert in trust and doing all the research that you have done?
When I started over 20 years ago now, really, part of it was I remember still being at this conference and working with this company. I think it was at the most expensive place that I had stayed until that point. This is before kids and everything. Lisa and I are out on the deck at the Lowe's Resort in Sedona, Arizona, or somewhere, and we're looking out and thinking, this is just intuitive, no research then. But I was just like, the problem they think they're having is not the real problem. It's not a leadership problem. It's a trust problem. It's not a sales problem. It's a trust problem. And I started to see it that way at first. Before my grad work, I just started saying, you know what? I will argue today, trust is always the leading indicator. It's like it's not a leadership issue. The only reason you follow a leader or not is trust. It's not a sales issue. The only reason people buy or not has something to do with trust, not an innovation issue. The way to drive innovation up is increase trust in the team, or learning goes up only when we increase trust in the classroom. And so I started to see it as a trust issue, and that led to my grad work that became interesting to people much more important and famous than me. So then we used the work. That was a big deal because, when we used in the first company, we used it in deeply, it drove attrition down by 2 to 4 million in 4 months or in 9 months, they said. And then we had a company say they tripled sales in 90 days. And we had a big company, Fortune 50 company, that said they gained 11% market share by shifting into this trust thinking. So I saw how, speaking of your work, how do you gain velocity? Well, you have to deal with the trust issue. You have to increase trust. And so at first it was intuitive. Then the graduate research kind of fueled it. Like I became interested. And then that led to work that actually just continued to fuel it. Now we put out one of the bigger studies on trust and leadership called the Trust Outlook.
So what are some of the best statistics you've found that relate to trust and why it's so important to us?
Well, I can give you a few top of mind. Last several years, the number one in first world countries, the number one reason the thing employees most want in their leaders, ahead of more pay, ahead of a more fun work environment with a ping pong table, number one is trusted leadership. They want it more than anything else. Another part of the study found people would work hours, be better team players, be more loyal if they just trusted their leadership. If you think trust doesn't affect the bottom line, half of Americans said they invested $1,000 or more based purely on trust. 13 million Americans said they invested $100,000 or more based purely on trust. So you see how it affects the bottom line. There's a whole lot more to the statistics. 92% of people would trust their senior leader more if they're more transparent about their mistakes. So they showed humility, not just transparency about how cool they are and how long they've been in business, but transparency about their mistakes. There's, we could go off on more and more statistics that hit on everything we talk about.
So on that statistic where you said that trust was the number one reason or the number one thing, a trait that employees really value in employers, did any of that research get into why?
Well, our big why, we see how trust impacts the bottom line. I think there's a host of reasons that we can pull from the data. But what happens, you can think about it even intuitively, what happens when you feel trusted, when you sense trust. You'll follow someone, you'll go to bat for them, you'll stand up for them. So there certainly is statistics I could pull out that would show here's why. I can tell you absolutely why we gain, what are the commonalities of those marketing message leaders or organizations that are trusted. That goes back to the framework that's been now over year been found to be what creates trust. Clarity. We trust the clear, we trust the ambiguous. Compassion. We trust those that care beyond themselves. We don't trust people that don't care beyond them. Even if they don't care about us, if they don't have a mission beyond themselves, we just think they're selfish. We trust those with high character. We trust those that are consistent for good or bad. If you're late all the time, I'll trust you to be late.
You're actually getting into something really critical here. You're getting into the reasons as to why we could break trust with somebody. So Absolutely. We were just to list them. One is clarity.
Yeah, if you want them listed, it comes out of these 8 components. Don't think of them as, even though I define them by C words, don't think, it's some 8 motivational C's. They all stand for a kind of a research funnel. So clarity, as you can imagine, ambiguity is not trusted. Neither is complexity. Most people are over complexifying, and I've done it myself.
As I have.
Yes. Number 2 is not in order of importance, but they're relatively co-equal depending, but compassion. Character is trusted. We might think character is everything, but I might trust Ron to take my kids to the ball game because of his character and not trust him to give me a root canal because of his competency. Number 4 is competency. Number 5 is commitment. We trust those that stay committed in the face of adversity. If you think someone will stick with you, if you don't think they'll stick with you when it gets hard, tend to trust them. Connection, really, that 6th pillar looked at collaboration, willingness to connect, willingness to collaborate, willingness to share resources for the greater good. If I go into a company, I see siloing, I know we got a problem with that connection pillar. The 7th pillar is contribution, and really it's contributing results. We trust results. You can't just have compassion and character and not contribute results. And this is a lot of what you get to with velocity to results, right? So, but you can't just have clarity. You have to contribute results. You have to get results. So I might have a great, surgeon that, going for amputation, they're compassionate and everything else, but they cut off the wrong leg. We got the wrong result and I don't trust them.
Right.
The final pillar is consistency, and that's just sameness. The only way to build a reputation for an individual is consistency. The only way to build a brand as a company is consistency. So sameness matters. And I said it before, it's good or bad. If you're late consistently, I will trust you to be late.
Right. So in the velocity mindset that you were kind enough to endorse, we talked about, how to align yourself with other people. We got into the neuroscience of the hormones, that you have to gain alignment. And one is managing one's cortisol, because if it's too high and they're stressed out, they're not listening to you. I would have to assume that the cortisol levels probably go up in people once they stop trusting somebody. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
And so then they're not feeling good about it, and then the dopamine's not there. And so that's why. So any research on the biological or the physical impacts of when trust is lost in someone or something?
Well, I can't, most of my work is on outcomes and outputs in organizations. So I don't have, you've done this work, but I don't have a work My work is not necessarily from a neuroscience angle, but I can just tell you with every bone in my body, when trust goes up, we know stress goes down. We know costs go down. We know, efficiencies, innovation goes up because we share ideas. So we just know a host of good things happen inside of companies and individuals, and you can feel them.
So if we go to those amazing results that you just said in the beginning of the show, results that some of your clients have achieved, they've increased sales by a whopping 20, 30%, whatever that number was. Can you go into one of those examples and just share how the trust work was brought into the company, how it was executed, and how it led to the results?
Well, overall, we're really trying to build a common language between all people and give tools they can use tomorrow morning. So I can give several examples, but I'll take that first one that dropped attrition. It was just a small 600-person organization, and now they're much bigger. But in our approach, we have basically 3 steps. So we call it ICE because we're from Minnesota, ICE. I is inspire a shift of thinking. It turns out we have to shift thinking around trust. We think we know it all. Oh, trust is transparency. No, it's not only transparency. Some of your kids are so transparent on social media, I don't trust them for a second, right? So confidentiality is also part of it. So we have to inspire. So that's often me or one of my folks out of the Institute here giving a keynote, half day, of executive day. It's kind of that first interaction. In the case with that company, the CEO saw me speak at an event and said, we need this here. So the first step was that he saw me, that kind of shifted his thinking. Then he brought me in to do a keynote to the company. The second step is clarify and measure trust. Or in ICE, it's clarify. So we measure trust. We have 6 ways we measure trust, everything from individuals to organizations to customers. But we use generally in our organization the Enterprise Trust Index to measure trust, close gaps. A lot of people are measuring the wrong things. They're measuring engagement when you don't get engagement unless you increase trust. So ours measures engagement and trust. It's a way built on 30 years of Accenture data, my grad work. It's a way of measuring trust and closing gaps. That's what we do. And then the last part is equip. E is equip. And generally that means we're certifying folks in our Trust Edge platform, content, and tools that they can ongoing reinforce, create a common language, use, apply over the long term. And we help them with that process. We make it simple for them. We help them. We certify them. And then we're ongoing. So for, with that company, worked with them, for a decade or whatever. So ongoing. So it's not just a one and done thing. So we're inspiring a shift of thinking, we're measuring, and then we'll come back and measure. So every time, this is kind of interesting about our work, our Enterprise Trust Index, in all the years of doing the index, when a company started with us, they do it maybe every year or every other year, only one time in history has a trust score gone down. And that was for a very specific reason. So you're measuring, closing gaps, you're seeing results, everything from massive universities to companies. So if we measure it, as you know, Drucker said this, is if you measure it, it gets managed. So when you measure it, that can really help us manage the right issue and solve it. And then the equipping creates common language, gives them tools to continually solve.
So without mentioning the company's name, if you can help us bring it down to a simple level as maybe 1 or 2 things that
Sure.
they did differently, the employees did differently as a result of the work that led to that higher attrition rate.
Well, here's one idea. So under the clarity pillar, we talk about something, we call it how. Many people today, consultants, are talking about the why, and that's great. It's good to have a good why because you don't last very long on a project if you're not passionate about it. Many people talk about the right who's on the bus, and that's good. The problem is we see companies on the bus with their great who's singing kumbaya about their why going right off the cliff. And this is because they're not asking the how. It's not true that I just have a strong why and a how just comes to me. I have to get to clarity. So in this culture, they got to asking, okay, how am I going to how until I can do something today or tomorrow. And this I've used this with myself, with big companies. You remember I lost 52 pounds in 5 months in 2011, and I've kept it off basically. And the process I used was not a health tip. It was this idea of, okay, everybody tells me eat less, exercise more. Well, that's too ambiguous. How am I going to do it? And by the way, I've got to come to something that I will do. If someone says I can never have ice cream again, I'm just not going to do that. So what is it? So I how'd it until there was a few things I would do today or tomorrow. Many people have meetings and they get to a certain level, but they don't get to a how till someone can do it today or tomorrow. And so one little tool they use was this: drive the how until you get to a final how, which a final how always includes a who, when, and where. So, even if it's me, if I'm going to work out tomorrow morning and I don't know when, 5:30 in the morning, I won't do it. If I have a choice in the morning of where, I'm either going to go to the gym or run. If I have a choice at 5:30, I'll do neither. I can't have choices. If I don't know who, like in a team situation, the final how has to drip to a final who. We've been lied to, and that is co-leadership works. It doesn't work. In fact, the data shows you'll get 50% less done if you have two people on a final task. You have to drill it to one for healthy accountability. It has to be one. It can't be two. It has to be one. So there's a final who. If you ever tell me, oh, there's a co-CEO thing that works, the only reason it works is they have totally different roles. So your final how always gets to a final who, when, and where. When we get there, we actually have hope. We get excited. Oh, I can do that. Like for me, I can stop drinking calories on the plane. And it's clear. It's me, I can look at, no calories in a Fresca. I can drink that, right? So I had certain final hows that I would do. And it was, when it's something you will do and you're clear about it, it gives you hope and excitement.
Yeah, I was just going to say what I was hearing was the clarity. When you got the clarity of how it was going to work and you can see it working, that's when you develop the trust that it will work. And that's why you're going to participate in it. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, because absolutely. And we don't trust people that say they're ambiguous. So if in strategic thinking, there's a lot of clarity. This clarity pillar we could talk all day about, right? Expectation, strategy, communication. But on this one simple how idea, what happened is when people would drive to a final how, I would trust them because, they're so clear. They know exactly what they're, most people, I don't trust them many times because it's like, well, I'm going to do this. We're going to get there. How are we going to do it? It's kind of, it's whatever. Well, I've got something I'm going to do today or tomorrow. That gives me faith in you that you're going to actually do something.
So I often have CEOs in mid-range businesses from $10 million to $200 million. If they're moving 2 plants into one or, doing something significant, they'll hear from the team, yes, we got this and here's what we're doing. The CEO will trust it, but then it doesn't happen the way it's supposed to happen. What should he have done differently?
There's a multitude of pieces there. I mean, this how piece can work about anywhere, but there's other things. So that CEO, I'll give you something that CEOs often don't do. They don't often understand the criticalness of over communicating on big projects or on change. Over communicating, even the why in change. Usually change isn't the issue. They say, well, I lost trust because the world's changing. I lost trust because we had to move buildings. No, you didn't. In fact, the fastest opportunity to build trust is in crisis. How you respond to crisis, you'll build trust faster than any other time. So as an example, I mean, there's 50 ideas depending on the situation, but in this case, one thing that CEO needs to do is over communicate the why. And also, if they're not, here's a simple strategy. This is simple for any manager listening even. And if they're not getting the outcomes they want, then I run through my head ODC, not OCD, ODC, okay? I learned, in fact, I'll go back here. So when I was younger, I was put, I was younger than all my staff on the first leadership role I had. And I was in another state, great board and everything, but I wasn't getting what I wanted. Finally, I got absolutely clear on what I wanted as far as the outcome, and I started to get what I wanted. I wrote it down. So a lot of times we micromanage the way they do it. We have little things in our head like, well, you got to do this or that, but we're not clear about the ODC, and that is this. O stands for outcome. What is the clear outcome? I've hired you. You might find the way here, but on that CEO, here's the outcome I need to see. Okay. The D is the deadline. A lot of times we'll say, I want to see that by, soon. I want to see that, whatever it is. And it might even be as complex as the project you're talking about. And we might not even know the final deadline of moving a facility, let's say. But we can say, hey, I want to know that we're here on this in 2 weeks. Can I see that? Or whatever. Give a deadline. And the C is, with that team you're leading, okay, are we clear? Can you repeat that back to me? Give time for clarifying questions. I know it's an oversimplification in some ways, but simplicity wins and builds clarity. So one thing we need to do is run through that ODC. Was I absolutely clear about the outcome, the deadline, and the clarify?
So you're really talking about clarity of expectations.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the biggest issues we always find in an organization is the lack of clarity of expectations. I'm here with David Horsager, who's the author of Trust Edge and a noted trust expert who runs the Trust Edge Leadership Institute. David, we're having a significant challenge in the world today. Because of the pandemic, there's an immense shortage in the supply chain. Every product's being impacted. People can't get deliveries from overseas, the truck's not going. Companies that are, one of anybody's business for, transportation now are actually firing some customers because they only want the customers they can trust to get that truck unloaded when it arrives so they're not delayed and so forth. So you relate it to salespeople, even companies, they're in a predicament because on the one hand, they want the deal. They don't want to lose it. And we always think we're going to lose it if we tell someone they can't get something when they want it. So they'll promise a delivery date. They get the bad news, and then they're afraid to make that call back to the customer with the bad news, which I always tell them, if you don't, you're going to have worse news later on. Why don't you address what they should be doing from the trust side and what the impacts are if they don't tell somebody in advance and then they're caught with a major surprise?
I think those salespeople, by the way, would be astounded at the grace given when we're upfront and overly honest. There's a massive fear, but people understand more than you might think the challenging world we're in. And if you take this person, they might win the sale one time saying, no, we'll get it there earlier than those guys. But after that, it's over. You got to think long term, number one. Number two, you've got to own it up front. As things change, feed that communication as fast as you can. People will trust you more. This also begs the question of how do you rebuild trust once you've lost? Because the problem with salespeople is we have to make commitments based on other people's delivery, right? And so sometimes salespeople will think, well, so it's not my fault that they didn't do their job. And the problem is you have to own it as if it was your fault. You have to apologize as if it was your fault. Now, let me just say something about rebuilding trust here, because we've all lost trust or made a mistake. Everybody has. How do you rebuild it? Let me tell you what it's not. It's not the apology. Many people think they rebuild trust on the apology. I'm not saying you don't need to apologize, but that is not where you rebuild trust. Now, in our deeper work, we have a 10-step process for how you rebuild trust if you're a big company with an oil spill. But frankly, whether you're a big company or an individual, it comes down to one thing, and that is this. You only rebuild trust when you make and keep a new commitment. We don't rebuild trust in the apology. You've had this said, I'm sorry I'm late. No, you're not. You're late every single time. We don't trust. We only apologize. Own it with words, but you only rebuild trust when they see it, when you make and keep a new commitment. So make commitments with weight, not lightly.
So there's a lot in what you just said. So basically, to summarize, if something happened and you lost your trust in me, the only way I'm going to gain it back is make another commitment, but make sure I can keep that.
Absolutely.
Then the second thing you said was make sure you make commitments you can keep. So I have a client that's furniture, a huge furniture business in the city of New York, and they're having trouble, and their lead times are going out from 4 months to 6 months. And I keep telling them, well, start making commitments that add the buffer in. So if you know it's going to be late or has a good shot, you can at least alert the customer. And if it's not late, you're the hero because you got it in faster. What's your opinion on that one?
Well, I think that absolutely. And you have to take that into consideration. You told me something that I think is very powerful. And that is, and it's so true. You said this to me one time. People hate surprises. And unless it's your birthday, and even then, think about it. Many people don't love it as a surprise. But I'll tell you what they don't want in business is surprises. Leaders don't want it. Delivery people don't want it. So you can think about this as a salesperson if you're a long-term thinker. if you're a long-term, remember velocity, long-term, it is they don't want surprises. So how do you mitigate for that? That's what you have to be thinking about.
So. Yes. So at the end of the day, like they always say in customer service, under promise and over deliver. Don't over promise and then under deliver.
And a way around that, some of you are thinking, well, yeah, but that guy's over promising. Of course, they're going to go with them because they keep doing it. Not very long. You'll be surprised what happens if you really are humble. If I go into it, so let's say something like this. Hey, really open. I mean, this openness wins today. So if I go into it like this, I'm like, I'm telling you, I want your business. I know you can go other places. I also know other people are telling you you're going to get that 30 days earlier. And I could tell you that too. I don't believe it. So I am trying to tell you what I think really will happen, frankly, whether you go with them or us. We're going to do our best. You go with that kind of phrasing. I just kind of gave a demo of what I think you should do. I think you'll win long term.
I got to tell you, I was just listening to that and I said, that's the one I'm going with. Even though it's going to cause me more problems, I can rely on it. That's the key. You know, trust is about relying on it. So then you feel good making your commitments to other people. We're here with David Horsager. David, tell us, where can people go to learn more about the issue of trust and what they can do to build higher levels of trust to the people who rely on them?
Well, we have a whole lot of free tools, complimentary tools at trustedge.com. No the in front of it, just trustedge.com. And that's where you can kind of see our institute. You can grab our free research. You can go directly to trustoutlook.com if you want the free research. You know, I've got 3 bestsellers, but a couple of the books I'd recommend, Trust Edge, The Trust Edge, or the new book, Trusted Leader, and it's the red one. There's some books with very similar titles, but that just came out. It's in airports these days, and it's called Trusted Leader. Both of those were written because I saw people not dealing with the root cause, trust, and not having a simple enough way to take action and apply it. And so those would be some starting points for us. But otherwise, just come to the website or get a hold of us. We'd love to help in any way. We know you're helping people gain velocity. If that aligns with being more trusted, we think it does, then we'd be honored.
It certainly does align with trust. And I think that when you think about trust, it's really one's personal values. You know, do you value the concept of trust and do you live it?
Exactly. That's the second part is important. So it's having them and living them, seeking to, imperfect as we are.
And that goes back to an old sentence we all heard, you know, words matter, but actions matter more. So stop telling people what you're going to do. Your actions will speak more. And it's your actions that gain the trust. Not
no doubt. Undeniably. Making a commitment and keeping it. That's why people kept saying, oh, this is what's trusted. Transparency. This is what's trusted. All 8 of those mattered. And frankly, people want to leave out the results pillar, which is contribution. Yet over time, you have to have that. Now, there's other people that get a lot of results without compassion or character, and they lose also. You have to think of all 8 of these together, but you have to get the results ultimately, and you know, own the problems on the way head on.
So this is a good way to end the program. You're talking about results, okay? So let's list the results that your clients have achieved as a result of developing greater trust in and outside the organization. What's number 1?
Well, I'll tell you what they've told us. So we've had companies triple sales. I had a dealer of a massive company, one dealer say he increased sales in 90 days by $4.6 million. I've had people say they dropped attrition by $2 to $4 million in 9 months, and they went straight through our process exactly. I've had a massive company that you would know say over $1 billion portion of the company say they gained 11% market share in 1 year. That was, by the way, that's bigger than people thinking just me saying, oh, 11% market share. I've had people in change efforts, big Toyota we did a change effort with, talk about the benefits of what happened. They were afraid to do it because of change, to add this trust component, and they said it made the change work and smoother. We've had cultural change that is harder to define. We've had a university football team that the coach said they went from 3-7 to 7-3 in 1 year using this work on the regular season. Of course, they went beyond that then finally in the second year. They do these 2 things, especially we did training for them over and over, but they do trust shields, which is an amazing way of building a team, frankly. And number two, they did the how strategy by position group and individual every time they're playing the next time. So there's a glimpse. I know our time's out.
So basically you're saying they gain velocity by using trust, and they'll sell more, they'll make more, they'll lose less people, and they'll win more games.
Absolutely.
David Horsager, what a pleasure it's been to be with you today. I'm so glad we finally got together on this. The reason why you and I get along so well, because we have that passion around trust and velocity. It's the same values, and that's why I value the work that you're doing. So please run out there and get the latest book, which again, David, is
Trusted Leader.
Trusted Leader. You can find it in the airports. You can find it online on Amazon and in your bookstores. And what we want you to do, since this is such an important issue, please, when you watch this program, share it with your colleagues, because this has to be a mission for everybody. If one or two people are only doing it, it won't really move the needle. Everybody's got to be living that life. Thank you, David, for a great opportunity to get into the world of trust. And that's today's program. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, go out there, make it happen for yourself, live the velocity mindset, and enjoy life.